In this video, I'm going to share with you some ideas about how I program using the Australian curriculum for mathematics, how I create an individual unit of work, the assessment rubric, and how I track the content descriptors throughout the year in order to cover all of the content descriptors. So the first stage is to copy and paste the content descriptors into a table. I've copied and pasted them into a Word document and use the orange, which is the same colour as the Australian curriculum. So I've got number and algebra, measurement and geometry, statistics and probability. So these are all the content descriptors that I need to cover for the year. Now I've also highlighted here in term 1. So in term 1 I'm going to cover all of these content descriptors. In term 2 I cover the content descriptors which are in purple. You can see I've left the green ones there so I know what I've covered in term 1 and then what I've covered in term 2. I've simply added term 3, and then by the time I finish programming for term 4 you can see that I've covered all of the content descriptors for year 3 in mathematics. Once you have an overview, a plan of what you'd like to do for the year, the next stage is to create your individual units. There are lots of different formats. This is one which I've been using. So the first part here, I have the topic, which is fractions. I've copied and pasted the year level description from the website, and I've highlighted the parts relevant for this unit. So the parts relevant are representing unit fractions. Underneath, I have the achievement standards, and again, you can see that I've highlighted the parts appropriate for this unit. They model and represent unit fractions. Next is the content descriptor, model and represent unit fractions, which is highlighted here. Underneath that, I like to put my report outcomes, so I have a focus when I'm creating the activities for the students. Then I have the general capabilities. So here I've got links to numeracy, critical and creative thinking. Also there's the cross-curriculum priorities. So you can see here within this unit I have links to Asia and Australia's engagement with Asia. The next part is probably the core part of your program. It's the learning and teaching strategies. You can see I have a column here for the teaching and learning strategies. Next to it, I've also got a column for the content descriptors and the general capabilities and cross-curriculum priorities. I like to have these here because it makes me justify, okay, this content descriptor is being covered in this activity. I am covering these general capabilities or cross-curriculum priorities in these activities. There's also a column for assessment. I use assessment rubrics and resources, which are listed on the side. So have a look at some of the activities. For example, for year 3, fractions, naming and ordering. So students demonstrate some common fractions by folding a piece of paper in half, quarters and eighths and so forth. Students can make fairy bread using a rectangular loaf of bread and a round loaf. It's important that students understand that a fraction is a part of a whole, whether it's a circle or whether it's a square or another shape, as long as it's an equal piece. Students come up with a conjecture about how to order fractions from the biggest to smallest by folding a single sheet. There are online activities, and also there's interactive smart activities, for example the TEQ fraction slider. So you have a look here. If you slide it along, it highlights equivalent fractions. Students can get an understanding of this by folding a piece of paper. But here on the interactive smartboard, you can see it is highlighted visually. They also have the opportunity to predict various fractions. For example, it's a half, it's a third. But taking that a step further, students can drag up a whole and have a look at how they can create various fractions interactively. It's also important that students view fractions from a variety of angles and as well as shapes. For example, on the next page here, it's the same activity except it's vertical instead of horizontal. There are problem-solving tasks, which I've listed down here, and then applying fractions. So that's the core of the unit. You'll notice down here, this is the cross-curriculum priority. It's actually pasted alongside here, so you know that this is being covered over here. The next stage with a unit is to create an assessment rubric. Here is an example of an assessment rubric. So you would have the student's name, the teacher, put the content descriptor down there as well. Not only for you, but it's important for parents to see what you're assessing against. And then I have the criteria. I use a rubric with a 5-point scale, a 5 representing an A, down to a 1 which is an E. And again, you can see here that I've listed what I'm assessing. So identifying, comparing fractions, positioning fractions on a number line, and identifying parts of a fraction needed to make a whole. Now these keywords here, independently, you can see across here, for example, and use an extensive range, uses a wide range, minimal errors, some errors, several errors. So you can see those keywords there were taken from the Catholic Education Draft Assessment Tools in order to create my own assessment rubric. So that's how I plan for maths. So again, you have your overview listing all of the content descriptors, highlighting them as you cover them each term, individual unit plans for specific topics, and assessment rubrics for your formal assessment.